Greetings, Onion Slice, and Game Informer has actually played 30 minutes of Resident Evil 9 Requiem. I will include a link in the description to their original article. Unfortunately, there is currently no footage for this demo. This demo was described by the developers to Game Informer that it was a no-action segment, but it shouldn't reflect the full gameplay of Resident Evil 9, which will obviously feature weapons. This particular segment only uses bottles to distract enemies to navigate the hotel, a mansion-like residence that Grace explores. Resident Evil Requiem stars Grace Ashcroft, a young FBI technical analyst and the daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft, an investigative reporter who last appeared in Resident Evil Outbreak. The gameplay demo begins immediately after the conclusion of the reveal trailer, where Grace is seen mysteriously captured and awakens upside down, strapped to a bed, and understandably scared out of her mind. Capcom tells Grace has little combat expertise, and the session features zero action. The game defaults to the now standard first-person perspective, but Requiem allows players to switch to third-person at any point in time. So the game was developed with third-person in mind, but it is primarily in first-person. Capcom recommends to play in first person as this is the intended way of playing Resident Evil Requiem. In the demo, the game is described as a survival horror experience, very similar to Resident Evil 7. It has dark hallways and dark spaces, several rooms have hospital beds, and there are remnants of medical staff, such as messages, and more horrifying, the bodies of doctors. The game immediately slips into the classic Resident Evil formula, trying to find keys, locked doors, and other useful files to solve puzzles. A lit hallway sits behind a gate, powered by a fuse box, missing one of its fuses, which is reminiscent to Resident Evil Village's doll section. Another room has a note stating the fuse box requires a screwdriver to open it, which should be located in the nurse's office. The game will feature jump scares. As described, one of the many jump scares is a body falling down from the ceiling and causing Grace to react. This is very similar to the Resident Evil 2 remake liquor hallway section, where the player character goes through the hallway and can trigger a zombie to fall down from the ceiling. So, classic elements are definitely there, and a lot of references. While navigating the nurse's office, Grace is met by the new chaser enemy, or a persistent enemy, much similar to Mr. X. This creature is described as a very large woman with stringy gray hair and a bulbous eye, and a tattered rag masquerading as clothing, very similar to Lisa from Resident Evil 1 Remake, although not confirmed whether this is Lisa or not. The player character has to run for their lives as this beast cannot be put down, very similar to Mr. X. It is interesting to note that this character will not be like Lady Dimitrescu, where she only followed you for a small segment of the game. This appears to be a more classic and traditional chaser enemy that will take a slightly larger part of the gameplay. The player of this demo describes this encounter as a persistent enemy. They were trying to find clues and keys as this enemy was constantly chasing them. Grace is only allowed to hide from this enemy, and when you hide for long enough, the enemy will actually travel around the hotel through tunnels and gaping holes around the actual structure of this mansion-like hotel. This entire segment is described as very similar to Resident Evil Village's horrifying dollhouse section, where you escape the baby. The player character does actually have to run away from this enemy, and it's not just a cutscene. The enemy will actually be able to deal damage to Grace as she is seen being grabbed and bit. After you take damage from this enemy, you will have to heal. This is where healing comes into play. So in Resident Evil Requiem or Resident Evil 9, you will be healing with syringes and green herbs. So the classic green herbs make a return in Resident Evil 9. You will most likely be able to combine these two elements, sort of like chem fluid with green herbs, to make a more powerful heal. Maybe perhaps a first aid spray, who knows. Anyway, that is all we know based on this demo. Please check out the original article written by Game Informer, where they go more in depth in the things that they have found. I personally am excited to see the return of a chaser enemy, and I am very excited to see how Grace will play when she does find a weapon. I'm not super excited about the sneak parts. If you know me, I am not a huge fan of bottle throwing in video games. I think it's a very cheap way of creating tension and limiting the character or the player to a specific playstyle. But, as described by the devs, this section features no action, so it is safe to say that we will see some action with Grace, and we will see other sections where she perhaps gets a weapon, maybe not a firearm, or perhaps a wooden plank or a iron pipes or steel pipes, sort of like Silent Hill 2 remake, but that is not confirmed. That's just me imagining things. But anyway, I'm excited to see what Capcom cooks up with Resident Evil Requiem. Please stay up to date by following me on social media, or by subscribing, or simply leave a comment down below and leave a like on this video. Let me know what you are excited about in Resident Evil 9 Requiem. I personally am so happy to know that there are references to the old school Resident Evil games in there, and one of the actual things that they described in this gameplay is that this new Mr. X type enemy actually breaks through the wall, sort of like Jack Baker and Mr. X in the B scenario in Resident Evil 2 remake and in the original Resident Evil 2 from 1998. So I'm very excited to see that happening, and I'm glad that they're including third person in this game, but I will probably most likely play it mostly in first person, as the game was created with first person in mind. Anyway, once again, don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay up to date, leave a like if you're excited for RE9, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.